Well, thank you very much for that, Nick. And thank you to the CCC for inviting me back. I had the pleasure of speaking at the 24th Congress in Berlin. So all I can say is the CCC must be a sucker for punishment to want me to speak again. And this has to be the biggest room I've ever spoken in. And it's wonderful to see so many people here. But you know the old adage, size isn't everything, it's what you do with it. So let's see what we can do now in very limited time. As Nick said, I used to work as a British intelligence officer for the UK Domestic Security Service, MI-5. This was back in the Jurassic era, in the mid to late 1990s. And I and my former partner, a man called David Shayler, were there for about 6 years each. And then we resigned in order to blow the whistle. In fact, I would suggest that in that analog age, we were sort of whistleblower 1.0. And what we're seeing now is the fruits of our labours with wonderful people like Edward Snowden coming forth and changing the global debate around what is proportionate about surveillance, intelligence and democracy. So that's why we're here to celebrate, I think. Just to recap... Just to recap very briefly, for those of you who did not sit through my hour-long presentation last time, I worked in MI5 in the 1990s with David Shayler for 6 years, and we saw a whole catalogue of crimes being committed by the British spies, which ended up in us resigning. These included files on government ministers, hundreds of thousands of files on political activists within the UK, bombs that could and should have been prevented, that exploded on UK streets planted by the Provisional IRA, which MI5 could have stopped, but then didn't, and then they lied to government to cover up their mistakes. Innocent people going to prison for crimes and terrorist acts they did not commit. Illegal phone taps, there's a surprise. And it culminated with what became known as the Gaddafi plot, which was MI6, which is a sort of James Bond wing of British intelligence, funding known Islamic extremist terrorists in Libya to try and assassinate Gaddafi in 1996. This operation was illegal under UK law. It went wrong manifestly because Gaddafi survived to be assassinated another day by CIA and MI6-backed rebel forces in 2011. And it killed innocent people. We couldn't think of anything more heinous than that, so we decided to resign, and we ended up blowing the whistle, and we ended up actually going on the run around Europe. This was back in 1997. We had to go on the run literally for a month with MI5 on our heels. We had to live in hiding in a remote French farmhouse for a year. David had to live in French exile for 3 years. He could not return to the UK. And he went to prison not once but twice. First of all, in 1998, when the British government tried but failed to extradite him from France to stand trial for a breach of the Official Secrets Act. And then in 2000, he returned voluntarily to the UK to stand trial, and of course then ended up imprisoned, found guilty, and he was sent to prison again. So he paid a very high price for his whistleblowing activities. I paid a very high price for our whistleblowing activities. And lots of people around us did as well, because our friends, our family, student activist supporters, and even journalists were arrested, and in some cases convicted, for reporting or supporting this kind of work. But this is ancient history. I mean, this was way back in the 1990s, where even cryptome was a mere twinkle in John Young's eyes, although if you go on the site, you will find a lot of documents still from the Shayler whistleblowing years. But one thing I learned from that, or a couple of things, key things I learned from that, was one, how the media can be controlled. It can be spun by the intelligence agencies, even more than our government spin machine. And two, the value of privacy. Because during those years, and subsequently too, I still have my paranoid moments, during those years, we knew that we were being investigated by the spies. We knew that our communications were being intercepted. We'd been on the inside, we knew how they did it. So we knew our emails were not safe, we knew that our telephones weren't safe, we knew as well that there was a high probability that there were property bugs planted in our home even in our bedroom, where they could listen to everything. We also found out subsequently as well that some of our friends had been pressured by the secret police in the UK to report on us. So this is what it's like to live without privacy. This is what it's like to live under a Stasi state, a secret police or totalitarian regime. And we had it early because we did something rather weird, rather extraordinary. We blew the whistle, we went on the run. We sort of expected that pushback. It does not mean it's easy to live with. It's incredibly corrosive to the human spirit to think that everything you say, everything you do, even if you just want to have a private conversation with your mother, is being listened to by some grey person in a grey office. And you begin to self-censor. You begin to worry about what you're looking at on the internet. You begin to worry about what you're saying, what you might be giving away inadvertently by talking about your private life, your social life. And that's what we had to live through. So roll forward now, of course, and now we all know that we are being listened to and watched and surveyed in a most amazingly panopticon manner, way worse than we faced back in the 1990s. So this is why I continue to fight for privacy. This is why I continue to campaign against this mission creep of the intelligence services. However,